Hi, I'm Steph Thompson, founder of the London Voice Boutique. Welcome to LVB Presents. We're a voiceover agency based in Soho, London, and in this second series, we're going to take you on a little journey behind the scenes with some of our actors. But also, I'm going to take you on a detour and talk to people on the production side of the industry to give you some of the fun stories and advice from the other side. Today I welcome Melody Sylvester and Emma Johnston, two very experienced TV producers. Melody, Emma, I first started working with you as production assistants in 1995 at an ad agency called Low Howard Spink, and both have gone on to have incredible careers. Emma, you are currently working as an executive TV producer, and Melody, you are now Chief Production Officer at TBWA. Thank you ladies for coming along to have a chat with me today. How are you and what have you been up to recently?
We're good. Thanks, Steph. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Good.
This is nice.
This is nice.
Like a little reunion.
We're going to be professional now.
Yeah.
I promise. No, we're good. January.
What's
in
happening?
Development on lots of projects.
Right.
Just want to get something over the line.
Yep.
Lots of that. Lots of end of year, beginning of the year development stuff.
Okay, so in advertising, because I'm going to talk advertising production because that's what we've all been doing for the last 30 years. Would you say that generally over the last year especially it's been quite a difficult up and down, it sort of production has been a bit quiet at the beginning of last year and then really ramped up towards the end of last year and now it's gone a bit of a dip again? Would you say that that's a fair thing to say, or are you finding it
predictable like it used to be?
No, it's difficult. Obviously in an agency, when we talk to production companies a lot, they're all saying quite universally that it was a really, really difficult year and there wasn't a lot of work. And weirdly, from an agency point of view, because we're at the development stage and often it takes so much longer to develop stuff before we even engage a production company and we've got to go for research.
So you're busy. But
we're
you're not
busy. Yeah, most people would say busy doing not very much, but we're busy trying to make the work come to life. So last year would have been really busy for us.
Yeah.
How productive it was is difficult. I mean, we made two big ads last year.
Yeah.
And one of them would have taken 18 months to get to.
What, from brief to...
Wow.
Which is nuts, really. But it seems to be commonplace now that it takes a lot longer to get everything. So from an agency point of view, it feels like we're busy production companies. But I don't know, what's your take? Because obviously you're right at the...
Yeah, well, because I freelance, I sort of get pulled in when there's something to work on.
Yes.
So I see less of the development stage of things.
Yeah.
But I feel like a few years ago it used to be very predictable when there was busy times and when there was quiet times in the year.
Yeah.
So everyone always used to say January was quiet, probably August was fairly quiet, but now it just seems so unpredictable.
Yeah.
So and you can't, and it totally depends on who you talk to as well.
And the kind of work, because if you're doing sort of retail, then you're already working on summer and you're planning holidays or Christmas. So it's an interesting one. I think I heard myself say to someone last year, an agency is probably the safer place to be at the moment because you're busy and but I don't know, it's difficult. The resourcing in an agency is becoming more and more difficult because obviously, as you both know, it's done by fee and your scope of work. And often when the scope of work is done, it's so far in advance of when you actually get to make it, and you don't even know what the creative's going to be.
Right.
So it ends up inevitably being not enough to get it through, and that's what's really difficult. And then it becomes really difficult to get producers in like Emma because you're constantly having to battle between the resource and the freelance and that whole sort of thing. So I think you're right. It's not as it's almost impossible to forecast for heads of TV and CPOs. You can't tell when things are going to land.
And also, I heard agencies that don't even charge fees for a lot of the work. I don't know how it happens with you, but in the old days you used to get retainer most of the time.
A lot of it.
But now a lot of it is project fee based, and agencies spend way above the amount of hours.
Yeah.
In relation to the fee, it's by the time you've done rounds with men's and it's gone into research and clients have changes and.
Do you think I'm also finding that we're finding a lot of research work is going through at the moment, and obviously clients are probably quite nervous to spend their budgets because budgets are smaller generally.
Yep.
So they need to make sure that whatever they then put on air is going to be exactly what they need to get across. That message is across, and it's a strong message and it's a successful message. Do you think that there's a lot more research these days than there used to be? Because research, I remember in the 90s when we were doing it as production assistants, you know, if they said to us, we're going to research a script, we'd be like, who does that?
Yeah.
You know, it was like, oh my God, who does that?
Make an animatic?
These you know, these ads are strong enough that, you know, but and budgets were okay, they were flowing, so it was like a risk that clients were willing to take. But now you can't afford that. So do you find that you're doing a lot of work up front researching, but then it all dies in research, or it gets
not
across the
necessarily,
line?
but what it feels like there'll be multiple routes,
Yeah.
and they'll research them
Yeah.
to get to probably to the point that we were advocating anyway. You end up spending more time on the research than they allow for production often,
Right,
which
right.
because they don't stop the clock.
Yeah. They still
for
need it
that.
on air at a certain
Yeah.
time of the year. So
Yeah.
You
you're
just find all
still-
these weeks taken out of your production
Oh,
schedule
yeah.
with research
But
at
I
various stages.
But I think because you said, because it's not always about, if it's not retained
Yeah.
and it's long project, it can be difficult. I mean, they're paying so much for media
Yes.
that they just can't afford to make a mistake, and they might make one film for that year.
Yeah.
And it's now, I mean, I was going to ask you how you find it, but the list of deliverables,
Oh, it's
I can't
huge,
even
yeah.
say it.
Deliverables, yeah.
Deliverables, it's like
Yeah.
a shopping trolley
Yeah.
of stuff that you've now got to get out of everything.
Is that because there's so many different platforms
Yeah.
now to deliver to,
Social,
and
all
everyone
sorts.
wants a different type of format,
Yeah.
as in,
very often different edits.
Right.
And
Different
very often,
markets.
if a client's making a sort of a fairly hefty campaign, they'll want it to have longevity, so it's going to last for 2 or 3 years. So you're going to have to know it's editable for
Yes.
future, you know.
Right.
Whereas before, every clients would just churn something out every year, and
Yeah.
with the big
Yeah,
budget.
or for a different, but you know, making different work across the year. Now it's one piece of work,
Needs to
and then
cover
that's why you end up in this kind of, well, we need a celebrity,
Right.
and then we need a really big piece of music, and then they can justify, you know, and then
Right.
they rinse that out and use it for across all the different markets. It's so. I mean, when I think back, I don't remember anybody using the word burn rate. Do you remember anyone talking about burn?
What's burn?
Like when
rate?
we were at Low Howard Spink
Yes.
as youngsters. I mean, are we allowed to mention that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like no one talked about overburn.
What's
There was just-
overburn?
yeah, well, if you exceed
it too
the
many
amount
times.
of hours that's in the
Yeah.
scope of work,
Oh.
so now you run burn reports. You know, you're
Wow.
constantly kind of going, you know, and you are always generally
Massively
running
over.
over.
Wow.
I don't remember any of that.
No.
when we
No.
were
I
when we were
remember-
kind of filing our nails.
I reckon they all got paid retainers though.
No,
Because it was all retained.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Massive
remember when they
retainers.
brought in timesheets and we were like,
Oh.
I'm not filling that in.
Oh,
And
God.
Used
like,
to go
now,
Timesheets. Timesheets are the bane of.
does anyone actually fill them
And
out
all
properly?
the creatives used to leave them for about 6 months until someone used to have probably still happens now, I should imagine.
Yeah,
Creatives
every
never
Monday.
fill out their timesheets.
Yeah, every
Don't
Monday.
you just put 8
Yeah.
across everything?
7.
Yeah, did that.
7.
Yeah.
7.5.
Oh, right, okay.
Bit of variation.
Yeah.
Sometimes 13. I mean, let's face it, we did used to work quite long hours. So, going back to the beginning, ladies, obviously you're now at the height of your career. But
Yes.
how did you both start out in the industry? How old were you? How did you get into the industry? What would you tell us a little story?
I was 19.
Were you?
Yes, I was.
Yes.
And I got a job as the secretary in the creative department
Yeah.
at Low Howard Spink.
And creative department, just to spell it out, because obviously you've got to know that quite a lot of
okay.
people don't necessarily know.
Where all the creatives were.
Yeah, so the
In a
creatives are the
department.
guys writing the scripts.
Writing all the
for
scripts, yeah.
commercials.
Guys and girls.
Which were always
And girls,
in the
sorry.
agencies were the cool the cool people. Everyone wanted to hang out with all the creatives.
Yeah.
And Lowe's had a massive creative. I think it was about 30 people there.
Yeah.
When I
30
joined.
teams.
Yeah, 30
Wow.
teams.
So
They generally
30
worked
times
in
2, right?
Yeah.
in pairs, so there'd be a copywriter and an art director in most teams. And I started off there, even though I couldn't type. I'd never been a secretary in my life. I basically lied.
Oh, did you?
Well, I don't
It's
know.
almost as if there was something else about you.
Did you charm them?
I think it was just my natural wit and humour. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I started out there, and I was Mark Wennick and Alan Waldew were my senior team that I looked after,
Wow.
and quite a lot of the other teams there. It was great fun, and the creatives used to come along. They used to write all their scripts out on these massive layout bits of paper, all handwritten, awful handwriting.
Yeah.
Then used to stand over me while I used to type it out because I couldn't really type.
Oh my God.
I'd had to practice type. I had to teach myself how to type
Yeah.
by copying out of books and newspapers. But it was great fun.
Did you
and there
have
was
computers? No, I'm not being funny,
No.
but computers were quite new.
we had electric typewriters.
Yes, I thought so.
And
Yeah.
can I just say, we also had the precursor to email. We had Lotus Notes.
That's right.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, yeah.
But also before that, we had memos that we had
Yeah.
to put in an orange envelope and run
Send it
around to
round.
the
Oh
person.
yeah, I missed
so,
that.
I used to like that
I
because
used
you
to
got
like
to
those.
see people.
I used to like those envelopes.
well, you get to talk to people, didn't you?
So anyway, I
Yeah.
stayed there for about 3 years, and then I kept asking to go into the TV department because it looked really fun and interesting. And I kept asking and asking, and finally they said, yes, you can go and be production assistant.
Amazing. And so, how long were you there before?
How long were you there before we came along?
Melody and I started on
we
the
started
very same day.
Did you?
Yeah.
I think I was there
24th of July.
Was it?
Yep.
maybe
Wow.
92 or 93 I started. Because I was in
Okay.
creative for like good 2 or 3 years.
You were already in the
Working my
TV
way through
department
the
when
She
we
knew.
joined.
She seemed like she knew everything, didn't she?
Oh, I did. I
She
knew
did.
it all.
Because she did. Because she knew everyone and she knew how all the
I
relationships
knew
worked.
how to
and we
steal
were
the post-it
literally
notes.
idiots. Two of us. Just sort of tripping along.
So funny.
Well, no, because you get the creatives on your side, you're all good.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's not always easy.
No.
I
No.
came from a post-production background. From that, at that point, I've been working at the Moving Picture Company. Where had you been, Mel?
Oh God. Oh
Think
my
back.
God. I've literally just had a complete
What
blank.
do you want as
Oh,
record
I was
designs?
at Post. I was at Post House too, but I was at Facilities Are Us.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly, which became Prime Focus,
Oh yeah.
and then became something else.
Okay.
Unit?
This is rough.
I don't know.
Oh.
But yeah, we started on the same day. I came for post production. You came for post production, and we
Went and
started.
worked.
And then we both started at the same time, and we worked. Yeah, we had good producers.
But it was back in
Yeah.
the day where it was one producer had one production assistant, and everybody had their own little office, and you learned off that producer
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
And also, they put me on a typing course. Did you do that? I swear I learned to
Oh, I still couldn't
touch type, and it was
still can't.
incredible. I learned everything.
Did you?
At Low House Swing.
We
it was
had to
in-
listen to every
Wait,
conversation.
Hold on a
didn't we?
second. How did you get on a typing course that we weren't on?
Because I've been winging it in creative.
I don't remember anybody
sector for
offering me that.
3 years.
So I can now type beautifully.
Beautifully. So I came from post production, and yes, and I agree. We were taught. It wasn't easy. I'm not going to pretend. I seem to remember absolutely hated it. My producer, who I'm not going to name, was really horrible to me to begin with, until I understood it.
Yeah.
And once I got it, it was great.
Yeah.
And maybe that was her way of teaching, and was probably the way she'd been taught. But I know it sounds a bit kind of cliched, but I'm kind of glad it was that hard
It
now.
was brilliant.
think we were lucky,
It was a
actually.
I think we were
brilliant way
lucky
to
because
learn.
we weren't. I don't know if there was that many. No, I don't know. Maybe lots of people had that experience after us, but it
Okay, so
felt-
you're in charge of a big, in charge of a big TV department. How many producers do you have, and how many assistants do you have now? 2 producers, because it's changed a lot.
It is different. At my last agency, I was at Engine.
Yeah.
I had a really big department, and it was, like 30 people, because we had editors and visual effects people, and we had live action people. So basically, Trailer Park.
Yes,
so I merged Trailer Park and broadcast into one thing called Engine Film. So that's why it was quite big. But my current department is really, really small. It's quite a small agency. There's only 85 people.
Oh, okay.
So the department's about 4 or 5 people.
And how many production assistants? Do you have?
One.
So it is. So that was going to be my next thing. I was going to say, do you think it's harder these days to get into production? Do you have any advice for people trying to get into production, or maybe you don't think it's harder? I just don't think there are as many positions as there used to be. But maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know. I've thought about this, and I don't know what the answer is, because I do sometimes think there's more ways to get information now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like we had The Knowledge, which was a
And a
spiral-bound
telephone.
book
A
Yeah.
desk phone.
and a desk phone. Whereas now you can go on social media, you can pretty much track down an email of pretty much anyone
Yeah.
in no time at all. Whereas before it was like a real mission.
Well, you had to write letters.
and it was out of date.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like
you
to-
had to write letters. And
But I still don't regret any of that, because we had to write letters
Yeah.
and we had to go and do stuff, and we used to. And I'm not doing that whole it was harder for us back in the day kind
No.
of thing, because I try not to do that. But in a lot of ways, it feels like it's more accessible now. But I suspect it's still the same kinds of people getting through? I don't know. It's difficult.
And how do you find, especially since the COVID years of people working from home, how do you find, because obviously what I'm trying to get to is that we had the luxury of having one producer teaching us everything. And there is so much to learn from your side of things, the production side of things, and more specifically the voiceover side of things and sound sessions. But since 2020, I've noticed a lot of production assistants were obviously taken on, but had to work from home and had to learn over Zoom, which cannot be an easy way of doing it. And how do you find it in agencies? How does your assistant manage to learn from people?
I think the pandemic, I think they are probably junior, entry level. They were probably the hardest hit, I would have thought, because you need proximity to teach, and they would have been at home, they would have been on Zoom. But then when they started going back into the office, quite a lot of the producers weren't going back into the office.
Right.
And so they were in the office kind of alone because it was easier for them with their because often, I'm not generalising, but if they live in a house of 3 or 4 people, they don't want to be on the group Wi-Fi. They want to get inside and they want to get out and they want to. But then we found it very difficult to retain people at that level because they just were like, I'm sick of being in the agency by myself.
And has that improved since then, or would
yes,
you say still?
I would say so.
Yeah.
I mean, we still don't have the luxury of having that many people, but I think there's probably a gap in their training where, because I think for us, being an assistant producer was all about audio post-production, wasn't it? I mean, we were out in places like this all the time, and that's how you learn.
Personal relationships.
Yeah,
this is what I find difficult, and I think that I don't know if it's my age, possibly my age, is that there's a lot of people really reluctant to speak to someone, like pick up a phone and speak. Whereas I feel that we've got where we are by having those relationships with people, building relationships with the post house, with the bookings team, with the guys that you can ring up and go, help me, I need to get a last minute.
That's how you learn.
And just to see how people
becoming their friend,
interact,
and then asking
but
for
the
favours.
amount of time I get stuff on WhatsApp and it got to a stage we were getting approvals on WhatsApp, and I was like, please can you just write it properly in an email and tell me which version of the edit's been client approved. Just don't go, it's approved on WhatsApp.
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
Because I think that communication hygiene, I've got a real thing. And I think producers are at the sharp end of it, because I have producers going, I can't keep up with the amount of channels of communication and for stuff like that. So you'd have Teams,
Slack,
Zoom, Slack, WhatsApp, text, email.
Oh, it's like a work. How would you describe Slack?
It's like an internal chat channel thing, like having a WhatsApp.
God.
But it can be really good for file sharing and things. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. You'll start a job, and there'll be a Slack channel, and if I don't know, if it's Friday and you say you weren't working on Wednesday, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you would have.
Oh my gosh.
It's just not hygienic. Like nobody writes an email and says version 1 take 6 has been approved, but could you make sure that the voiceover is a little bit more upbeat? In the last,
I know.
It's that level of detail.
There's all the stuff that could be easily solved in a 2-minute phone call then takes up like that much worth of screen space.
I'm a little bit old school and I still phone people because
so annoying.
Even though you then need to follow up.
I see you ring and I'm like,
thank you.
Just email me.
Just text me.
Slack me for God's sakes. But did I show my age? So basically, I have found that a lot of people coming to us that are new to the industry don't always know the information to give us, and I'm sort of having to spell out as an agent what I need. Now, obviously, that's fine. I'm not complaining. It's just interesting to see that the way I had learnt it and had the luxury of learning. Thank God I was a TV producer, to be honest, because sometimes I'm sort of having to explain to an assistant how to do their job, and I don't mean that in a patronising way, but it's just because thank God I know that side of it to go, I think what you now need to find out is go and ask the media buyer, go and ask this person, because they'll immediately go, no, I don't know the media information. You're like, well, you will, because they will have had to book it, therefore you need to ask your media buyer. But that automatically send through the media plans. They never break that down for you anymore.
And reads it.
And we used to learn how to read it, but now I have to say they've got more and more complicated.
Yeah.
I'm always pushing back, going, no, I'm afraid you're going to have to get this broken down.
That's not your job to be reading.
It isn't for me to tell them what's on there. I could make it up.
You'd be surprised how hard it is to get a media
it's
plan.
impossible.
And it doesn't mean that it's not going to change. I seem to remember. I remember engine before I left, there was a producer who was literally going, the media plan has changed 5 times whilst we're in post-production.
Yeah.
And so that it was, and no one seems to be worrying about the fact that that's going to affect the
cost.
budget.
Yeah.
And, which you were probably doing on a really tight deal anyway.
And it's not just the voiceover, it's the deliverables and the post-production and everybody
and everything.
and the time.
And not telling the voice, having to go back to an agent and say, well, actually, so that's why that relationship thing is paramount, because a lot of the time everybody's got to pull together to make it actually happen, haven't they?
Completely agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Okay, so I was going to say, in terms of voiceover sessions, do you do them yourselves or do you have assistants to do them? Mel, I feel like you probably don't go to the sessions anymore, but Emma,
I
you
love
do.
an audio session.
I love it. Do you not miss
love
it?
I do miss it,
casting,
yeah.
Go and ask for your cappuccino, your capu.
I don't really, to be honest, it's like, I don't really get to go out that much.
Yeah, that's the problem as you go up the ladder. Sorry, but the
become
higher
more-
you go,
the higher you go,
like,
the less
am I
light there
just
is.
sat in a meeting. I want to
know.
go out and do the voiceover sessions.
That's
I
why
do
stopped
miss
doing-
post-production
when I was
and
head of
production.
TV. That's what I used to miss production.
Yeah.
That's why I've stayed in as a
Yeah.
freelance
I
producer.
think there's a
I
lot
love
to be
it.
said for that.
Yeah.
No one even wants you to go to the shoot.
Oh,
And because you're too expensive
Yeah.
in the fee.
Yeah.
They're like, sorry, what?
you can stay at
You
home.
go to the shoot.
I love
Can you-
voiceover casting and I
But,
love the
yeah.
audio sessions.
So I was going to ask, do you get? I mean, if you're not attending, you may not be involved in the process. I don't know.
No,
you can
I mean,
correct me on that. But
I'm aware of it enough, and I see what's happening. I do like to look at casting.
yeah.
Mm.
So
I'm
how
just
do
nosy.
you? So how do you go about casting, and who does the casting, and have you found any sort of fashions at the moment? Because I see the fashions changing constantly for
what I've-
voiceovers.
I find getting a voiceover brief from creative sometimes takes a lot of time. And by the time they've got it to me, I've already got in my head what I think it is
Oh,
that they're
okay.
after.
Cast it,
And I've got a long list together. Yeah, I very
which
often
is what they
have.
want, right?
I love visualising in my head the voice that I think will go with the script and the edit. I like that.
Yeah.
So I very often have got a long list and then I'll sort of whittle through it depending on what their brief is. But sometimes you get the brief that basically says, we want someone northern but not too northern. Jolly but quite serious.
Yes.
Basically
Every
I want
descriptive
everything.
word
Yeah.
ever. Yeah.
So you have to sort of pick out what you think the salient points are of the person that you think that they need.
Yeah.
But a lot of creators are really good at giving very good briefs.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does
I've
vary.
always fancied myself as being a voiceover artist.
Oh, you're not alone, love.
Everyone's. I always. People used to always ask me, could you do the guide VO?
Yeah.
And then they go, you never know, we might use it for the
Yeah,
real thing.
it's 10
And I'd be
grand
like,
piece.
buy out. Right. And then there's and then they go, no.
Yeah.
So many times, and it still happens.
But it's actually so much harder than you think.
really
As a
hard.
produ-
I
when I was
why doesn't somebody want a nice
producing,
husky South London.
they do. But
Completely undisciplined.
I mean, I've literally been pulled into the session several times when you were like a PA, especially. They go like, "Oh, can you just jump in and
Yeah.
do a couple of lines for us?" Probably just to hold it. You'd go in, you'd be like, "Okay," and then you're like, "Oh,
Oh
God,
my God, I
actually,
can't
this
do
is really
it. It's
nerve-wracking."
so
It is
nerve-wracking.
hard.
Yeah.
So nerve-wracking.
So the amount
I've got
of
a lot
having this
respect.
conversation, because with casting directors and so many people think they can do it, but actually, and when there's a producer and a creative team
Oh my
directing
God.
you,
Sometimes a client.
yeah, you don't want someone who doesn't know what they're doing
Oh,
or has
my
been
Lord.
trained to be able to take that direction or sound nervous or claggy because they've all gone a bit nervous. It is hard.
No, I've
isn't
got
it?
a lot of respect for voice-over artists.
Thank you, Mel.
I have to
And it's
say
when
that.
you get a good one who knows what they're doing,
Yeah.
it is absolutely brilliant. Because if
Yeah.
you get someone, it's a fine line between getting someone who goes, oh, I think I've done that word slightly wrong, can I quickly do it again? And then someone who does that all the time and you're like, oh, I'm going into 2 hours and I've only budgeted for an hour.
Yeah.
This
That's
is
the thing.
exactly what
The
I said in
overrun
another one.
sweat.
Yeah,
That's
I
what
said in
God.
there's another podcast that I was talking about how, as a producer, the worst line you can have when you're in a sound session, and it's been a bit of an ordeal getting there, when the artist goes, I think I can do better.
Yeah.
What's your reaction to that? Shut up.
It's
right?
fine.
If you thought they could do better, they won't think it, right?
Yeah.
But when they...
It's suddenly like you're just like, no, because you've just cast doubt on everybody in that room, and you're like, as a producer, going, Great. Now we're into the second hour. I don't have a budget for.
It's good if the client
nightmare.
have just gone, oh, I like that take, and
Yeah.
everyone's got to like that take, and they do it. Then I'm like, I get that twitch, and I'm like, no, don't say it, don't do
Yeah.
it. But if it's
Like,
like take
and-
3, and they're going, oh, can I just quickly do it again? I'm like,
Yeah,
of
that's
course.
fine.
I like
but
if they're
once everyone's
aware,
agreed
you know.
it, you look at the
Yeah.
engineer like, turn off the talk back. Turn off the talk back.
I know,
Shut up. Get out.
I know.
It's nice. I mean, producers. I mean, I reckon producers are probably the one person in that entire group who is not having as much fun as everyone
you
else.
reckon?
Like, no, well,
Yeah.
just because
You're
know
watching
everyone's
the
ordering their
budget,
food
yeah.
and everyone's eating their noodles or whatever, and
Yeah.
you're still thinking,
Got an
"Shit,
eye on
have
the
I
clock
got
and the
enough time?
budget. Yeah.
Did
Yes.
I? Oh, have I? You know, there is always that element. I mean, we're probably kind of all addicted to it a little bit, but there is always that thing of shit. Because
Yeah.
if it goes really well, you won't get thanks.
No.
But if it goes
And
badly,
if the voiceover doesn't deliver, they're all looking at you going, well, why did we get this person?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though they chose.
even though
or,
they
you know,
chose
you're
over
like, oh
your
my
recommendation,
God.
even.
And do you, if someone doesn't deliver, do you think badly of the voice agent just out of interest?
Yeah, I normally put a big black line through them.
Luckily,
Do not
clearly
use.
I've never not delivered them, my love, because you're still working with me.
Yes.
But would you say one other, like a note, when you're in a voiceover session as a producer, I used to try, because if you do have a lot of people in a session, something I wanted to sort of put out there, would you agree that having one voice, giving that
Yes.
direction to the voiceover is helpful? Because as a voiceover, I know that they prefer it when one person gives it.
Yeah.
So I used to say to production assistants, gather the information from everyone, turn the talk back off, gather the information and the feedback from the client, the producers, the creatives, and then give that one instruction.
Yes.
Because
Ideally
otherwise
to the
it's
most
just-
articulate member
Yes.
of the team.
And
yeah.
I used to give it to the engineer and be like, right, can you now tell them what we want? Because
Yes.
they will look at the engineer for guidance.
Yes.
And I think if the engineer if they're a good engineer, they can take that skill is to gather that info and give that one direction.
Yeah,
Because
and they
it's
know
too
how
hard
to.
otherwise.
Yeah. No, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
the amount of times I very often have to go to everyone around the room. What did you think of that? What did you
Yeah.
think of that? You know, because
So you
sometimes
leave the talk back on because
no,
sometimes
because
it's quite
like,
hard for the artist
I
to hear that.
think that's
No.
I think that's not great for them because if they're here, but then I sometimes think if their talkback's off and they can see everyone talking, what is the
What are
artist
they
thinking?
thinking?
They're
No,
thinking, oh
because
God, they're really like
I think
discussing it
the
all.
advantage is if you have the talk back off, it means that the artist can't hear you. And they know that you're going to be having a discussion.
Yeah. And it could be
do we
about
want
lots
to
of
discuss
things.
the script,
What
the
do you want for lunch? Do you
delivery?
want
What do you want?
Yeah.
What do you want to do? Yeah.
Did you want?
Who put this
you
clown
want
in the
fries
voiceover
with
booth?
that?
Was it you?
And then is that with fries? And then they can just hear the positive version of your twist around and like
Yeah.
that was great. However, we're going to try it a different way. I just think it's so negative. We've had artists, you know, recently I had an artist who, you know, he had been delivering it as he was on his reel, and the client walked in and went, why have we got this bloke with this accent? You know, this is all, and he heard it all, and
Oh,
there's
no.
nothing worse. You know, like it's just really heartbreaking
that's just
when they've
bad.
done an.
That's just
I agree,
bad
but
practice,
you know, it's
full
better
stop,
to
isn't
keep
it?
the
That wasn't one of my jobs.
no,
Yeah.
no. I'll have a word with you later, Mel.
Oh,
tell
Yeah,
you.
give me the name.
God.
Okay, so obviously, I know that voice reels, you know, help you choose, but obviously, you're probably a bit like me when I used to listen to them as a producer. Be like, right, 3 seconds or 5 seconds if they were quite good.
Yeah.
What do you think makes a good voice reel? Is it literally a natural voice that the first thing you hear, or is there something else that you're listening
I guess
for?
it depends on the brief, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I do think there's a trend more now for just regular voices.
Yes. But actors who can deliver it, because if you
Yeah.
put my mum in the booth, she would not deliver.
Yeah.
But this is the thing, everyone we get the brief often, which is like, real people,
Natural, yeah.
what they mean is an actor who sounds natural,
Hmm.
rather than real people, because everyone's quite real.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
did
tend
can't
to put
really get-
robots in
You
there.
can't get real people to do it, though, can you?
I did
That's
do a
No.
job a few years ago. I think
You
you helped me out with
did.
it was the brief was basically street casting,
Yeah.
and I was like, I'm not going to do that because we'd spend 2 weeks trying to street cast people, and no one would ever be happy.
No.
You might get 1 or 2 people.
No.
So in the end, I think you worked,
You did
you and
use
Sophia,
quite a few of mine.
yeah, and even found people like friends of yours,
Yeah.
friends of Sophia's from her acting
Yeah.
background.
You
was
need
really
a
useful.
level of-
Exactly.
It's
Because you need
confidence
to know
as
how to
well.
take. You need to be able to
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
feedback,
and
right?
fit
I
it
think
in
that's fun.
30 seconds.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's super challenging
Mm.
work that. I
Yeah.
think it really is.
All right, on a more general note, ladies, I talk to everybody about this. This is the bit of the podcast that everyone gets to answer. I mean, you may have already said, what is the strangest or most fun direction you've given to a voiceover in a booth? Silence.
Put your clothes back.
Yeah.
Oh, that's you, Mel.
Sorry, no, I can't. I wish I had something funny to say there, but I don't think I have.
I'd really have to think about that.
I think one of the funniest for me is that when you used one of my guys, Ozzy, and you got him in, and he's like this really cool
He's really chilled
dude,
out.
and then you got him in to do like loads of whooping
Yeah.
and cheering and clapping, and I was like, of all the people, I would never have thought him.
Did he enjoy
He
it?
absolutely loved it, absolutely delivered,
can't
and it went on
remember.
air. But it was just like, that was quite funny to choose
Yes.
him and then get him to go in.
Because I
It's
think
like
the
such
brief
a cool
originally
dude.
was like a real cool urban voice, and then it suddenly changed, and they wanted all these reactions
Upbeat.
from him.
Yeah,
I can't remember how I even got him to do that.
but he did. He went in and he
I
did
remember
it.
having great fun though. We did have a laugh.
Yeah.
I think he enjoyed it, didn't he? Or did he come out
Oh,
going,
no, he loved
never
it.
send
No, no,
Never
no.
to
book me.
job with that woman again.
No, he absolutely loved it. But it's just quite funny for me is that I was just like, he came out and went, well, I just had to do loads of whooping. And
Yeah.
I was like, I love that. That was so not how
It must be
expected that
nice.
to go.
It must be nice to not have to do
What you
terms
expected.
and conditions.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
No unusual ones though, otherwise.
Probably in the olden days, but I'd have to. I mean, obviously
Really
we've
rack
had
your
the
brain.
"Can you
That's
stop
the lines.
drinking" in the voiceover session. We've
Have you
had
had
that.
that?
Oh,
Have you had people, yeah,
Yeah, I
back
have
in the
had
90s?
Smoking.
turning up so drunk we couldn't do anything,
Oh,
and then having to call
really?
the agent and say.
Oh no.
Oh,
And
no.
I think this person was renowned for
Ah.
being like it.
Yes.
So it was like, right, we'll send him, her, / them in tomorrow. Can you do the session like early to make sure?
Well, it was. Well, we talked. Was I already saying this? Where you had to time it between the hours of 11 and 1. Maybe I said that.
Wasn't
in
that for the
previous
creative
one.
teams?
For the creators,
Yeah.
yeah. Where they're just a little bit recovering from the hangover before they
Yeah.
go back to the pub. So
Also, I've had
yeah.
terrifying ones where someone's refused to do the job
Have you?
in the voiceover.
Why they
A really
refused?
well-known actor
Oh.
had seen the script and everything, given the agent the script and everything. We all, apparently he'd seen it. They'd seen it before. Was in the booth, and I was there on my own, and it was when I was very junior.
Yeah.
Oh, God,
and
it sounds awful.
with the sound engineer, who's very experienced now, but we were both at that same level. Like, we were both terrified, and the voiceover person was someone who was very terrifying as well.
Oh, really?
Did not know how to
And was there a
handle that.
reason for the no?
Just obviously didn't feel like it.
But
that
turned
day.
up,
Turned up.
but didn't want to do it.
Didn't want to do it.
Get
I'm going to
paid.
have a good guess after
Yeah.
this session because I think I had something similar.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting. We'll
remember if we
compare
did it or
notes
not.
afterwards.
I nearly cried.
Oh gosh.
In fact, I think I did cry.
I think back in those days where there was less competition, artists had more power to say yes or no, especially if they were celebrities.
Especially if they were
Yeah.
famous.
Now
yeah.
I think people are more grateful for the work, and I think there's just a natural. People appreciate that actually you can't behave like that anymore. There's the whole cancel culture, but there's also just like you won't get work again.
Yeah.
But in the 90s, there was a lot more. I'm going to behave this way,
Yeah.
and you can pay.
And the
me lots of
voiceover
money
work
for
probably
that.
wasn't as a bigger part of their
It's very much, do you
their
know who I
earning,
am
yeah.
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Is that a
yeah.
post-pandemic thing, or
No,
is it
I
just
would
the way things are
say
going?
over
do you
the
think?
last few years, I don't have anyone on my books that I don't enjoy working with. I was saying to somebody the other day, I have a rule. I don't want to represent anyone with an ego. I just think I just want to work with people that want to work.
Yeah.
We're a team. I'm out there trying to get you work, and you go out there and represent us well.
Yeah.
And if people have egos and sort of turn up and refuse to do a voiceover, that doesn't make my life any better, and I'm not going to get work off the back of that. So I don't work with people like that. And I actually go into meetings now, like anyone. I'll just be like, have you got an ego? Because I'm not your agent. But that comes with age and confidence.
Yeah.
I
Age
wouldn't have
and
done that
confidence.
20 years ago, but
No.
now I'm just like, I'm not the right person for you. Because
It reflects
it's
badly
tough
on you,
getting
doesn't it?
work, and you've got to. I'm
you've gotta
working hard to
commit.
get it.
Yeah,
You've
yeah.
got to work hard for me. So
Can I ask a question just to...
Yeah.
Do you think being an agent and agents have changed? Because back in the day as well, like in the 90s, whatever, agents were as formidable. You had to know how to manage them as
Yeah.
much as anything else.
I think
Does it
I
feel
think
like
it's
it's more
probably-
collaborative
I
now,
believe
do you
so.
think?
Yeah, I wouldn't like to comment on other agents, but I do believe that people are easier to work with now. I
Yeah.
suspect they still are. I haven't had to work with any of them for 10 years, but I go into meetings with them and we all get on quite well, which is quite fun, you know.
Yes, okay. It's
Whereas
not
I don't know that it
partisan.
would have been so, I think it would have been more difficult in the past. So, yeah, I think so. I think people are more aware that you've got to just work as a team, whoever that is, whether it's the producer, agent, or the agent artist. I think that
There's still a few people who don't enter the negotiations though,
Yeah.
which I feel is quite old-fashioned.
It
way
feels
of doing
kind
it.
of, and they kind of stand out for that, right? I think, and people talk.
Yeah.
You know, it'll be like, yeah, but they're agents and nightmares. So
Oh, really?
But I
Okay.
mean, that's not just voiceover.
Yeah.
I would imagine, you know,
Oh,
just
yeah,
generally
yeah,
talent,
generally,
that
yeah.
stuff.
Oh, yeah,
I'm sure
there's
Melzy talked about that.
I'm not sure actually.
There's a few actors agents who are a total nightmare. You know, when you go to a casting and you get the castings and you sort
Oh
of
no, you like
see
the
the
actor,
thing,
but
you're
you
like,
can't.
oh no, they're with that agent. Oh god.
Yeah. Oh.
I'm going to get inundated with like, which agent?
Yeah, what did I change?
Do not use.
I will not. No comment.
Yeah.
Can't remember.
All right, finally. Well, no, not quite finally. It's 5 o'clock on a Friday night and you've just finished a recording session. Well, imagine you have. What do you do in Soho? Now, I know that these days a lot of people go, I'm not going to be in Soho on a 5 o'clock on a Friday night. But remember the old days where we were?
We'd all go to the pub.
Right?
Yeah.
Where would you go?
Wow.
That probably doesn't exist anymore.
Which one?
To go to
There
the
was
coffee house.
Sun and 13.
Sun and 13.
Blue
yeah.
Post.
Still around? Those
Yeah,
are
But
still
I wouldn't
around.
be called then.
Won't be being sponsored by Blue Post.
Well, generally,
So I love the Sun and 13.
it depends where the creatives wanted to go as well, because you generally were
You
with
go
the
with
creative
them.
team, and they were always up for going out
Yeah.
and having fun.
Yeah.
And before you knew it, it was 3 a.m.
But it was always Soho because
was
all the
Crown and
sound
Two-
studios were here.
We were
Yeah.
in
Crown and
Knightsbridge. We used to ferry
Yeah.
across.
Yeah,
Crown and Two Chairmen.
yeah.
Sun and 13.
Coffee house.
Coffee House. Blue Post.
But because
Yeah.
all the sound studios were here, you'd sort of book your sessions for 3
Oh,
till
yeah.
5,
Oh,
and then
yeah.
be like, right, now I'm done
Everyone
for the
was
day.
wise
Yeah.
to that.
No
as
point
well.
in going back to the low house.
Yeah, I'm
space.
just going out to the voice service.
Yeah. And once
See
you
you on
did-
Monday.
Yeah.
Once you tipped all the little chocolates from the reception into your bag, the whole
Yes.
bowl, just pass
And
out
you-
to the pub.
This is when they had bags.
Yeah, I know.
Remember, we'd have their bags
Yeah.
in the office under our desks with sweets in.
And I think yes, I had drawers full of chocolates.
We
that I'd
did, and we
stolen.
needed them.
We
we
needed
needed
the
them.
sugar,
Did.
yeah.
We needed the sugar in the afternoon after
Absolutely.
being shouted at by someone. Have you got any chocolate? Yeah.
You
And
need
we
it.
wouldn't get up. We'd roll our
That's right.
We'd roll our
On the
chairs
wheelie chairs.
down.
The corridor.
I can actually right now. I can see both of you in your wheelie chairs because
yeah.
you're where your office was, where your
So
office was,
lazy.
just wheeling back to go. Because we were under the stairs. Do you remember
Yeah.
I was under the stairs.
Yeah, I love it.
God.
They were good times.
They were good times.
I don't regret them.
No.
Any final words of advice for anybody, well, voiceovers starting out in the industry? Have you got any wise words?
For voiceovers.
Yeah, I think so. That's...
Obviously, come to you to be their agent.
Oh, yeah,
that
no,
what- is
but
that what
actually,
we're
no.
supposed to say that?
No.
Seek out a
Also-
good agent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
seek out a good agent.
Yeah, good
Ideally,
agent.
you.
I would
Well,
say
no, because
be
I'm not looking for new artists. at the
open to
moment.
Oh,
criticism.
excuse us. please edit that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, get a good agent.
Yeah.
Not Steph.
Not Steph, because she's not looking. Build up some work. Watch stuff. I'm always
Yeah.
amazed at how little people watch work
I
and
know.
film. Because I was going to ask you earlier, do you find yourself when you're watching TV? Are you listening?
Yeah, listening
Yeah.
And do you write it down?
and watching. And I
Do you write
suppose
it down?
sometimes I'm like, oh, I wonder what that person is, or
Yeah.
actors and things like that.
I write down music and
But I don't
lighting.
think creatives do that anymore.
I'm not sure if anybody does that
I
anymore.
do. I love
bet
it.
you do.
Yeah. And Melzy turned up earlier and had been to see a show recently and was like, I've got to track this guy, the lead
Yeah.
Yeah,
down.
just
and-
all of that is
love
still
all that.
really super exciting,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think consume
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah.
There's so much more, and there's so much more of it.
Get passion.
Watch
I think
stuff.
you need to have a
listen
passion
to stuff.
for
You've got to have a
it.
passion for it, and that would be my advice for anyone in any area.
Yeah.
Like you've got to love this stuff.
I agree, and I think when I very first started out I was like 17, trying to get a job as a runner on any kind of film production, and I was working on a film called Patriot Games. Do you remember with Harry Ford?
just that little tiny film.
Well, I was working with the wardrobe and the set designer on it. I was literally a nobody, work experience, and I was sitting outside his office one day at Pinewood, and they were filming at Pinewood at the time. And I was sitting there waiting for him, and this other producer comes out and goes, right, you're next. And I'm like, for what? Anyway, I end up in this office with this. It turns out to be one of the top LA producers, but I can't remember his name, but it's on the end of the film. And I just thought, oh, they must be asking me about work experience or something. I don't know. So I end up, and he was like looking at his seat. He's just like, right, what's your name? And I was like, oh, Stephanie Thompson. And he was like, so when did you last go to the cinema? And I was like, oh, Tuesday. And he was like, oh, what did you see? And oh, I just happened to see the prequel to this one. He's like, right, when was it before that? And I was like, about a month ago. And he's like, why are you in my office? If you haven't been to the cinema every day, like if you're not consuming films, if you're not reading all the magazines, literally laid into me. And I was like, I'm just here on work experience. And he went, oh, I thought you were here for the job. I went, no.
You're hired.
He kicked me out. But it was the best kick up the arse. I literally came out shaking.
Yeah.
But it was a massive kick up the arse to how serious he was. Like, oh, I get people here that do this. Da, da, da.
Yeah.
But it made me realise how competitive this industry is. And if you want to shine out, you need to find a way. Well, how do you shine out? But, you know, I then joined every magazine, Go Empire, all those film reviews. Do you remember all those?
Yeah.
Went to the cinema all the time. I'm up to my game. And I think these days it's got even harder, and I think you have to really up your game if you want to shine out, especially, you know, as an actor, how do you stand out? It's quite hard.
I think that is a fantastic piece of advice. I mean, I hope that wasn't somebody. There's all sorts of film producers that could have been in that room who might have said other things when you walked in there.
Yeah.
That was what my head went to.
Yeah. Oh, no, I know. Early 90s. No, I didn't have to do anything.
No, but... that's my advice to everyone. Like, you know, if you're you know, my nephew's just done a degree in graphic design, and he's trying to work, and I'm like, so you're really into what design books are you reading?
Yeah. No, you need to be
You've
passionate.
got to consume, but I do think it's that you have more access to that. I mean, you can find just about anything you're interested in online, so it's easier to get cultural reference. But I think you're right. If you want to be in this thing, whichever way, if it's styling, whatever it is, you need to be constantly looking at what. I just don't see how that would change.
Yeah, you have to be engaged and proactive.
Got to be engaged. Know what you like. Know what you don't like. It's as important to be able to say, I don't really like that and why, than to just be able to go, I know what I love, because sometimes you don't know.
Yeah. What do you look for? Is there anything that you'd say,
in
you know, when you come in for the first time doing a voiceover?
It is a confidence thing, but I guess that comes with experience. Because, you know, I have had a few sessions with people who I think probably hadn't had that much experience, and you can tell.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, and then sometimes I think the more something goes wrong, the more they get it in their head.
Can you hear it in their voice?
Yeah, you panic. And so I have had the time when I've said to the person, I was like, just take a break, go out, go and sit in reception, go for a wander for 10 minutes. Wow. It's fine, don't worry, we're not angry. You know, it's important to say we're not cross with you.
Yeah, you've got to get through that session.
Even though you've completely messed up my project.
You
know, come back. And then all the while you're thinking, right, if this doesn't work, who could I get in?
Yeah,
like, you know.
Meanwhile,
but it's hard. If you haven't got the experience, you haven't necessarily got
to fake it till you make it,
exactly.
babes.
Absolutely.
Right, on that happy note, I'm done. You guys are
amazing.
done.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for coming in and
we
talking.
weren't even that funny.
Oh, you were.
No.
Did we say any sex jokes? No, we didn't.
No.
And that's it for the show. Hope you liked it. And if you did, please rate and review the show wherever you get your podcasts. LVB Presents was presented by me, Steph Thompson, and produced by Mike Hanson for Pod People Productions, and recorded by Sean Dios at Jungle Studios in Soho, London. See you next time.
Pod People.